Well, happy Sunday evening, everybody. Welcome back to the BattleCry. I'm glad to be back live with you. I've been out and about and on the road. In fact, last week I was actually in Alaska doing some salmon fishing. I know you feel sorry for me. It's really hard out there. It's actually beautiful. If you haven't been to Alaska, it is the last really wild place left in America. I was in a very remote area of Alaska. It's incredible. Walk outside and really hear the quiet. It's just amazing. And to our teammates and friends who live in Alaska, you guys are blessed, man. Really is God's country. It was fantastic. I came back recharged, excited. I was hanging out with a bunch of people I really love to hang out with. And I came back with 50 pounds of fresh Alaskan salmon and halibut. So we're set for the year. It's going to be a good year for eating fish, barbecuing fish, smoking fish. I love that stuff. Anyway, that's what I did the last week. I hope you guys had a week that was just that great. And this week, I have a special battle cry for you. This week's battle cry, the thing that I want you to do, because you know it's not enough to just watch and nod and maybe yell in agreement every now and then, or even argue with me. I expect you guys to be in action, because that's what sets you guys apart as grassroots activists. Grassroots activists are, well, you're active or you're not an activist. So the thing I want you to do this week is I want you to get engaged, and let's call it the rest of the month in what we call 5 for 5. So that's 5 for this 5, the Roman numeral 5, right? 5 for Article 5. And what I mean by that is go out and get 5 people to sign the petition. Now, maybe that sounds like a big task to you, but I would argue it's really easy. Here's why it's easy. I'm not asking you to go stand on a street corner. I'm not asking you to go pitch strangers. I'm not asking you to make videos. I'm saying I know for sure every one of you, no matter how active you are, no matter how hard you've worked, you have 5 people in your circle of influence that know what you do. They even support what you do. They say, hey, I love it. I think it's great. I love convention estates, but they probably haven't signed the petition. I know it's true for me in my own family, in my own circle of friends. Like there were lots of people I've never even asked, well, have you signed the petition? I know they all support me. And so I went out and got my 5. And now you guys can go out and get your 5. Don't limit it to 5. Do more. Send them to conventionestates.com, just like you did. It's not hard. Click on sign the petition and have them sign the petition. And then follow up and make sure they did that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this. I want you to think about this. We have, what is it now? 2.6 million, 2.7 million people that have signed the petition. What if 1 million of those got 5 more? That would be 5 million signatures. And frankly, what if 500,000 got 5 more? 2.5 million more signatures, more than the total we have right now. And what if it's just 250,000 did it? I mean, think about the numbers are incredible and how easy that is to do. So I'm counting on you guys, and I want to see a huge bump in the number of petitions signed that we have. And you guys can make that happen. I'm counting on you. 5 for 5 this week and for the next few weeks. All right, let's jump right into the news, because there's a lot of stuff that's happened since I've been gone. A lot of stuff happening just in the last week. It's been an incredible week, a busy week in the news. I would argue generally a positive week in the news. One of the things that's really at the top of my radar, and one of the most interesting things that I've seen happen, I want to say in a very long time, is the idea of fixing crime-ridden cities. Now, what have we been told about fixing crime-ridden cities? We've been told it's really difficult. There's all kinds of societal causes. It's generational. It's deep. We've even been told it's impossible. I hear this all the time. But here's what I have to say about all of that. No, it's not even hard. And I know that might sound outrageous to say that, but Trump just proved it in Washington, D.C. D.C. is exhibit number 1. Trump said, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We're going to federalize the police force in Washington, D.C., which has absolute unfettered right to be able to do this. He can do it for 30 days, and then it requires a congressional reauthorization. And what happened? What happened? People are like, oh, he can't do it. He's going to take over the city. It's fascist. In 1 week, the first week, it is the only week in 10 years in the summer without a murder in Washington, D.C. That seems pretty good to me. I know people who live there and work there, lots of them. Everybody says this is completely different. And it is completely different. I talked to my son who rides the metro into D.C. a couple of days a week. He said, it's safe. There's no vagrants on the metro anymore. There are D.C. police on every train patrolling up and down. He said, you just feel comfortable getting on the metro. The metro was a crime-ridden, disgusting, dangerous place previously, and now it feels safe. Same is true walking down the streets. It had been dangerous to go out on the streets after 8 p.m. in Washington, D.C. And that's not just in the bad areas, it's everywhere. People were getting robbed, people were getting assaulted, people were getting carjacked, all that stuff. Way down 1 week. What's that mean? It means it's not hard. It just takes the will. Crime is a choice. It's not inevitable. The left keeps telling us over and over, well, this is just what it's like to live in a modern city. You got to deal with this. You got to deal with feces on the sidewalk and drug addicts and vagrants and homeless people and crime. That's not true. Trump just proved it in a single week, and it's extraordinary. This should happen all over the country. This is what should be forced on mayors all over the country, on police departments all over the country. They are making a choice, which leads us to a question. Why do Democrats love criminals and predators and sexual deviants and illegal aliens and pretty much everything except for normal law-abiding citizens? Why do they love all those people? Why do they put all the illegals, all the criminals, all the vagrants, all the drug addicts, all the homeless people defecating on the sidewalk, all those people, why do they put all of those people above law-abiding citizens? What kind of disease is that? What kind of mental disorder do you have to decide, look, we got to coddle the criminals, and we can't put people in jail when they commit violent offenses, and we can't keep them in jail after they've committed multiple violent offenses? Or it's somehow sympathetic or kind to let people live in cardboard boxes and tents on the sidewalk. Or somehow, it's okay to have to walk over discarded needles and human feces on the sidewalk. What kind of mental disease does it require for you to have that attitude versus, no, we're not going to have this. We're not going to allow this in our cities. We're not going to let our cities be controlled by gangs and criminals and vagrants and drug addicts and prostitutes. We're not going to allow that. We're going to clean up our cities, and we're going to make them safe for the good people living in the cities, the people who just want to raise their kids, the single mom who's trying to drop her kids off to school, who then has to go to work, who wants to know that her kids can walk home safely from school. We're going to make it safe for her. We're going to make it safe for people who live in the inner cities, people of color whom the left claims to love, who are the most victimized by violent crime. We're going to make it safe for those people. What does it take to just say that? We're going to put as many police on the streets as it takes to make that happen. We're going to call in the National Guard if we've got to call in the National Guard. If we're a state, we're going to call in the State Guard if we've got to do it. We're going to make our cities safe for our people. When will Democrats start saying this? This shouldn't be hard. It's not hard. Donald Trump just proved it's not hard. Crime is a choice. And right now, for some reason, I don't understand this, to be honest with you. The Democrats have chosen that they're on the side of crime. They're on the side of criminals. They're on the side of drug addicts. They're on the side of homeless vagrants. They're on the side of feces on the sidewalks. They're on the side of rapists and pedophiles and illegal immigrants that are preying on our population. They're on the side of criminal gang members. I don't understand it. I can't explain it, but we need to change that. In America, that needs to change. We need to do what Donald Trump did in Washington, D.C. We need to put our foot down and say we're not going to tolerate it anymore. God bless Donald Trump for doing this in Washington, D.C. D.C. should be the shining city on the hill. We are the best, most exceptional, most powerful country in the history of the earth. Washington, D.C., our capital city, should be beautiful, should be clean. It should be rejuvenated. It should be safe for families to walk down the streets at any time of day or night. Donald Trump is doing that in D.C., and he's proving we can do it anywhere. This is a challenge to all the Democratic leadership in the country in all of the urban hellholes that exist out there, in places like Philadelphia or Boston, right? These should be historic American cities that should be safe and clean, or Chicago, right? Cities all over the country. San Francisco used to be one of the most beautiful cities in the entire world. It's terrible now. It's not safe for normal people. Businesses are leaving. We need to fix it. Democrats, you need to stand up and start facing off against this stuff, or you're just going to admit that you're the party of crime and predators and sexual deviants and drug addicts and homeless encampments and criminal gangs, all of that stuff. It's up to you guys. And if you run a red city, if you're a mayor in a red city, don't tolerate any of this stuff. We shouldn't have this stuff in red cities either. It's not as bad, but I know it still exists. So if you're a mayor in a Republican-run city, if you're a citizen in a Republican-run city, you should demand the kind of enforcement, the kind of law enforcement that you're seeing on the streets of Washington, D.C. right now. We can clean up our country. Trump has proven crime is a choice, and we just need to say no to crime. Right, speaking of crime, or at least what Democrats are accusing Republicans of committing crimes, and that is the idea of gerrymandering. You know, gerrymandering has a long and storied history, not just in the United States of America, but it goes to history all over the world, really. I'm going to read some stuff to you. I went to Grok and did a little bit of research on what's the history of the gerrymander. I knew some of this, but I didn't know all of it, so I wanted you to hear a little bit of it. You know, gerrymandering was invented, as far as we can tell, in the United States of America by a guy by the name of Elbridge, and it was Gary, actually, not Jerry. It's Eldridge Gary, and he was a U.S. politician. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, probably not a name you've heard of other than gerrymandering. He was a governor in Massachusetts in 1812, and he signed a bill that redrew the electoral lines, the district lines in Massachusetts, to favor what was then called, believe it or not, the Democrat-Republican Party. And one of the district's odd shapes looked something like a salamander, and that prompted his critics at the time to coin that a gerrymander, right? Or they probably would have called it a Gerrymander by combining his name with salamander. He didn't personally create the map, but his approval of that tactic tied his name to the practice of manipulating these boundaries for all time. The concept is way older than him, though. I mean, it certainly has been done ever since the beginning of our republic. And honestly, it goes back even further. It goes to colonial America, even ancient voting systems like Rome's tribal voting systems. The idea of the gerrymander, or the favorable districts being drawn, is something that's always been around. So there's nothing new about gerrymandering. There's a long history around gerrymandering. And I want you guys to know that, because right now the Democrats are acting like this is something brand new and amazing and terrible that the Republicans are doing, but it's not. It's not new. It goes all the way back in our country to prior to the Declaration of Independence. The question becomes right now, if you have a radical nuclear war of gerrymandering, it seems like that's what we're engaged in right now. Texas is going to do its redistricting. If you actually look at the map, by the way, it's less gerrymandered than the existing map, the new map. It will give Republicans probably somewhere between 3 and 5 new seats. I'd say 2 for sure, but upwards of 5 seats, depending on how people vote. So that's one. And then you have Gavin Newsom, who we're going to talk about this later, but Lord, what is wrong with Gavin Newsom? He's gone insane. So now they have a constitutional process in California that only allows them to redistrict every 10 years, and it has to be done through a redistricting commission. It's not time for that. So now crazy Gavin Newsom is trying to get the voters to agree to allow him to gerrymander midterm before the next elections to, quote unquote, offset Texas. So what's going to happen, right? What happens if this goes beyond Texas, beyond California? Like, who really has the advantage in a nuclear redistricting fight? So I want to run through a little bit of this. Republicans control the redistricting process. They have 23 trifectas, and Democrats have 15. So they control the redistricting process in way more states than Democrats. By the way, also in a lot of the Democratic-controlled states, they've given over that process to what they call nonpartisan redistricting commissions. They're not nonpartisan. They're always stacked with leftist Democrats, but that's the perception they try to create. So you can see there's a structural advantage to Republicans already, 23 to 15, no redistricting commissions versus redistricting commissions. And so what happens? Let's run through a few states. Texas, as I said, can probably flip up to 5 seats. So that's underway right now. I think that's done, actually. That's going to happen. Ohio requires a new map. Right now, it's in place. By November 30th of 2025, there has to be a new map. The one passed without Democratic support expires at that point. And Republicans potentially could target 2 to 3 seats, potentially flipping 2 to 3 seats. So there's another 2 to 3 for Republicans. Florida, they expect a mid-decade redistricting, or they're looking at doing that now. Currently, their House Speaker, Daniel Perez, has formed a committee to do that. they could flip one seat, maybe more, by targeting some competitive or Democratic leaning districts in South Florida. Missouri, Republicans are eyeing Emmanuel Cleaver's Kansas City seat. That could be redrawn. That'd be a safe Republican seat, one seat. Indiana, 1 to 2 seats, possibly. South Carolina, Nebraska, maybe, but there are some limitations there. Nebraska's 2nd district could be made less competitive. That just secures a seat. It doesn't add a seat. South Carolina, probably not much to be gained there. So when you add all those up, it's 9 to 13 seats that Republicans can gain from redistricting. And then if you run through what Democrats can gain, the problem for Democrats is, again, they don't have the trifectas, and they've already done this in almost all the states. So they've got these independent redistricting commissions in states like California and New York, which limits their ability to counter what the Republicans are doing. And let's run through the states where maybe they have a chance. California, he's pushing to put something on the map. Maybe they could gain 3 to 5 seats, but only 36% of Californians right now support returning redistricting to the legislature. So will the citizens agree to take it away from the commission and give it back to the legislature? That looks uncertain. New York Democrats led by Kathy Hochul, they could target maybe 3 to 4 seats. The state, by the way, only has 7 Republican seats. And also redistricting requires 2 legislative sessions, meaning they couldn't pull this off until 2028. So it won't affect the midterms. Illinois, they're already super gerrymandered. 14 of 17 seats are Democratic, despite the fact that 44% of the vote went for Trump. I mean, they could gain 1 to 2 seats. Can you imagine that would take them to 15 or 16 out of 17 seats in Illinois, a big population state with a big Republican population, but maybe 1 to 2. Maryland, look, the Democrats already control 7 of 8 seats there. They possibly could do it, but I think they have some challenges geographically. So they gain maybe on a stretch 1 seat there. Other states you could look at, New Jersey, 9 out of 12 are already Democratic. I mean, they could try it, but they would have to change their constitution. So that's not going to happen before 2026. Washington, the state of Washington, 8 of 10 are already Democrats. No juice to squeeze there. Like, there's nothing that they can get out of it. They're going to gain 0 seats. Okay, so do the math. 3 to 7 seats in 2026. So if it gets nuclear, if it goes, all the states start to run at this, Republicans gain 9 to 13 and Democrats gain 3 to 7. So in other words, huge net victory for Republicans. So it doesn't make sense for Democrats to try and do this, but just like the way the Democrats love crime, that doesn't make sense either. And they still do it. So are we going to have the full nuclear war? I don't know. We're going to have to watch what California does first. Texas is done. We'll see what California does. Going to be super interesting. If there is a nuclear war, my bet's on the Republicans to win that war. And that brings us to something I brought up during this redistricting stuff, which is, what is wrong with Gavin Newsom? Now, I don't know if you follow Governor Newsom on X. I do. It's interesting. He's been sort of a chameleon. I know you probably saw he launched a podcast. He interviewed Charlie Kirk and a bunch of other right-wing influencers. He's trying to paint himself as some sort of a moderate, but now he's gone full weirdo. I can't even, it's hard for me to follow it. So if you watch the way he's posting on X, he is trolling, imitating, mocking, I can't figure out what you want to call it, Donald Trump. In other words, his texts are in Trump style. It's he's very bombastic. It's all caps. He's saying a bunch of very aggressive stuff. It's just weird. It's not Gavin Newsom style. It is Donald Trump style. So it's not weird in that it's different than anything anybody else does. It's weird in that it's almost an exact copy of Donald Trump. And he's pretty much admitted this. He's saying, like, Donald Trump does this and he does it very successfully, so now I'm going to do it. I don't know if you ever watch Gavin Newsom talk, but he does this a lot. It's super weird. It's just the hands are in and out all the time and not according to his words. It's a very odd thing. Anyway, that's an aside. But he's gone full blown, I'm going to act like Donald Trump. And there's also, which Trump doesn't do that much, there's a bunch of swearing involved. He said he's going to punch him in the damn face on an interview recently. I don't know what it is. Is he trying to be a man? He's a full metrosexual guy, the slick back hair. And I don't know if he's had facial work and he's always in perfectly coiffed, right? That's Gavin Newsom. I don't know what he's doing. Now he's trying to act like a tough guy. And maybe he thinks this is going to appeal to the base. Maybe it does appeal to the radical part of the base, but I don't think most normal human beings like it. It's just weird. I encourage you to watch it for amusement only. Switching to international politics instead of in-house politics here in the United States or in-state politics in Texas or California, I want to talk a little bit about Ukraine and Russia. We can't finish out the week by doing this. It was a super interesting thing, the summit between Putin and Trump, and not much came out of it. They did get to meet face to face. I think it's incredible. I think Trump is engaged in a way that I've never seen a United States president engaged. In other words, he's looking at all the conflicts in the world and doing everything he can to stop them. And he's doing it in a most practical way. It's not ideological. It's not partisan. The Democrats treat it as entirely partisan. They want him to fail to end the war. He just wants to end the war. I mean, he's worried about the numbers of people killed every single week in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It's like 4,000 to 5,000 people a week. And so he met with Putin. I was actually up in Alaska while this happened. I didn't get to see any of it, of course. I was a little busy to be at the summit, even if I was invited. I wasn't invited. But anyway, it was in Alaska while I was up there, and I'm not sure what came out of it. You know, there were discussions. There was no agreement announced. But immediately after the summit, within 48 hours, he has all the European leaders sitting in front of the Resolute desk in the White House. That's incredible. In the Oval Office, looking like school kids being called before the principal. And the principal is lecturing the school kids. It's an incredible thing to see the power of the presidency and the power of the United States when we have a president that's willing to wield it. So he calls all these leaders in front of his desk. They all gather around. He's talking to them about what they're going to do. And he is telling them what they're going to do. They're going to buy U.S. weapons, and then they're going to provide those weapons to Ukraine. Remember, for those of people who are freaking out, oh, the U.S. is supporting Ukraine. Bottom line is NATO is buying weapons from U.S. weapons suppliers and providing them to Ukraine. That benefits our military industrial base. That's a whole nother discussion about whether you believe in doing that. I think we have to have a strong defense, and that requires a strong military industrial base. I'm not a big fanboy of theirs. I think there's a lot of corruption there too that we need to root out and fix. But the bottom line is builds up our military industrial base. It gets paid for by NATO. NATO has agreed to bump their budgets, their national budgets, to 5% of GDP for their participation in NATO, for their military budgets. Never done before. Everybody said Trump couldn't do that. He got him to do that. Now the leaders of NATO say that's a good thing. The leaders of the EU now say that's a good thing. And they're all praising Trump for his efforts in Ukraine. You know who's not praising Trump? The media here, of course. They can't stand it because he's doing a good job and he's moving things down the road towards peace, and they just hate it. And so they have to call him a Putin's cat's paw, or he's just Putin's guy, or he's only doing Putin's bidding. This is ridiculous. We have an intractable war that's killing 5,000 people a week, and Trump just wants to end it. And he's a realist. He understands that Russia is not going to just pull back and give up everything they've gained in exchange for nothing. They have at least 100,000 dead. Some estimates go way higher than that. And he's not just going to pull back. His regime would fall if he did that. If he just said, okay, we're out. We fought to a draw. And so Trump acknowledges there's probably going to be some kind of territorial concession. Probably Donbass ends up in Russian hands. By the way, Donbass has a huge contingent of population that is Russian speaking and loyal to Russia and would rather be part of Russia. So that makes sense, at least a little bit. Look, I don't like it. I want to be clear. I don't like any leader being able to go into a foreign nation on a hostile basis and take territory and be rewarded with that territory. But the bottom line is you got to end the war. You got to end the killing, and you got to do it in a way that's realistic. So that's what he's trying to push there. I think it's a great thing that he's trying to push it. The media hates it. We had 70,000 Buddhist monks come out this week and sign a petition saying that Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize. Can you imagine how much the left hates that? Right? They love the Buddhist monks in the orange robes. And this happened. And what are they going to do? What are they going to call the Buddhist monks MAGA now? Right? Oh, these are a bunch of MAGA racists. I don't know how they're going to deal with it. But you have people clamoring, people who are pacifists, saying that Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. He has solved 7 international conflicts in the last few months since he took office. Unbelievable, unprecedented. He's stopped conflicts that were starting between Turkey and Pakistan. Incredible what he can do, again, when he's willing to wield the power of the United States economically, the power of the United States militarily, and the power of the presidency. But once again, you have the left siding with the bad guys, which is we don't want Trump to win. We want the war to go on. We want people to continue dying. It's absolutely crazy. Speaking of the left siding with the bad guys, there's something I have to talk about. I don't want to talk about it. I wish I didn't have to talk about it. I mean that sincerely. I am so frustrated by this and disgusted by this and worried about this. And this is the continuing rise of anti-Semitism in the United States of America and around the world. And I want to be really clear about what I mean by anti-Semitism, because I'm hearing a lot of people say things like, well, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm just anti-Israel. I'm not anti-Semitic. I just hate AIPAC influencing Congress, right? I'm not anti-Semitic. I hate the fact that we give $3.8 billion in military aid to Israel. I'm not anti-Semitic, but, right? And so I want you to understand the definition of anti-Semitism and a critical phrase that it includes. Now, this is put out and put together, and there was a huge committee that did this by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And they define anti-Semitism as a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as a hatred towards Jews. And you see, frankly, a lot of that online right now, including coming from people like Candace Owens, a hatred towards Jews, encompassing actions targeting Jewish individuals. And you see people online saying, oh, well, the Jews deserved it. You see Jews being attacked. We saw Jews gunned down in Washington, D.C. coming out of a Jewish event. So targeting Jewish individuals, communities, or institutions. Examples include Holocaust denial. We're seeing a whole bunch of that now. People directly denying the Holocaust or minimizing the Holocaust, downplaying the Holocaust. By the way, one of the most documented events in human history, admitted in its planning by Germany, admitted in its execution, pun intended there, in its execution by the meticulous record keeping of the German government and the German army, proven by the statements of survivors, proven by the statements of those who participated in the executions, in the Holocaust, not just of Jews, gypsies, gays, lesbians, handicapped people, anybody that they didn't consider pure and Aryan, proven. And people are saying it's being overestimated or didn't actually happen, or it was just maybe a mistake. And so Holocaust denial running rampant, blood libels about Jews are all Satanists, Jews are all pedophiles, Jews literally, you see this, it makes me sick, use the blood of children, of Arab children to make their Passover matzah. And then this is the one that I see the most right now that is really blowing my mind. Disproportionate criticism of Israel that crosses into targeting Jews collectively. Disproportionate criticism of Israel that crosses into targeting Jews collectively. So I want to give you some very specific examples of this because I hear them all the time, even from people that I think are too smart to say stuff like this. Like, I hate AIPAC. AIPAC controls Congress. AIPAC is a private political action committee not connected to the government of Israel that does lobby on behalf of good relations with Israel and support for Israel. Americans, by the way, lobbying on behalf of good relations with Israel. And so people criticize AIPAC. They hate AIPAC. By the way, that's fine. But what you don't hear them say is, I'm against any lobbying on behalf of a foreign nation. By the way, I personally would be in favor of a total ban of any foreign nation paying lobbyists in the United States to lobby the U.S. government. We need to do that. Countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and China pay hundreds of millions and ultimately billions of dollars to influence U.S. government policy. That should not be allowed. Full stop, mic drop, should not be allowed. But you don't hear people calling for that. You hear people criticizing AIPAC. So if you only criticize AIPAC when there are organizations like this that are spending way way more money than AIPAC influencing the federal government on behalf of foreign nations, foreign policies, foreign people, and you only criticize AIPAC, that's anti-Semitic. It just is. You may not consider yourself a Jew hater. I get that. You may not hate Jews. But if you single one group out for criticism when the behavior is broadly done by a wide variety of groups, and I'm talking hundreds of groups, and some spending way more money than AIPAC, and you criticize AIPAC only, that's a form of Jew hatred. That's discrimination. That's anti-Semitism. When you say something like, I don't understand why we give Israel military aid of $3.8 billion a year, we got to stop that. But you don't call for stopping aid to all the other countries that we give aid to, just Israel. You single out Israel for that. That's anti-Semitism, right? Again, remember, examples include disproportionate criticism of Israel that crosses into targeting Jews collectively. That's what it is when you say it's about Israel and the money we give to Israel. By the way, we give $3.8 billion to Israel. 99% of that is spent with American defense contractors, meaning the money never even leaves the United States, and that's to provide weapons to the Jews who are surrounded by Arabs who hate them and would like to wipe them from the face of the earth. It's been estimated, the best estimates I've seen is for that $3.8 billion in military aid, we get approximately $50 billion in return. $50 billion in return comes in military research, exchange of military technology. It comes in military and civilian intelligence, preventing terrorists from infiltrating the United States and infiltrating and killing Americans all over the world. 3.8 billion returns 50 billion. Look, if you're against that, like you could be against all foreign aid, all military aid, I get it. But if you're saying, well, why do we do it? What's in it for us? If you're against a financial transaction that's 3.8 that generates 50, maybe you have a math problem, maybe, or maybe you have a Jew problem. Maybe it's just a Jew problem, right? If you don't understand that we give billions and billions of dollars in military aid all over the world, and you don't have a problem with any of that, look, if you're a person who says, I don't think we should be involved in the world, I don't think any of our money should leave our shores, I don't think we should give any other country aid, I think that's foolish, I think it's Pollyannish, I think it means you don't understand how the world works, you're entitled to that opinion. But if you only target Israel for your criticisms with that kind of stuff, that's anti-Semitic. It's not just anti-Israel, it's anti-Semitic. Because the reason you do it is you are doing disproportionate criticism of Israel and the Jews who live there. It's the only Jewish country on the face of the earth. There's lots and lots and lots of Muslim countries. I don't hear you criticizing them for being Muslim countries. I don't hear you criticizing them for getting American aid, and a bunch of them get American aid. If you only criticize Israel, then you are disproportionately criticizing Israel and the Jews, and that's collective punishment of Jews. And that's anti-Semitism. So if you don't consider yourself an anti-Semite, and I don't think most of you are, but you're doing that stuff, then stop doing that stuff. I'm frustrated by this. It's very dangerous. I watched Megyn Kelly do an interview this week. She interviewed Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I think is a complete and total lunatic at this point. I mean, she's just outside the bounds of reason and rationality. She's a lunatic. She's completely anti-Trump at this point. She's completely anti-Semitic at this point. Look, I actually kind of put aside the fact, remember, she actually retweeted that Jews had space lasers with which they were setting fires in the United States. That was early in her career. I just thought that was stupid. It was a mistake that she did that. Now it just sounds like she's an anti-Semite. She was on Megyn Kelly this week. Megyn Kelly didn't question one of her asinine, ridiculous assertions. I don't know what's wrong with Megyn Kelly. I like Megyn Kelly. That's ridiculous. It's Tucker style. Tucker now has people on who question the Holocaust, who say maybe Hitler wasn't the bad guy, Winston Churchill was the bad guy, and Tucker doesn't question them. He just, oh, really? That's very interesting. You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to ask those questions in America. Yeah, no, you are, Tucker, because you're asking those questions and you're not demanding any real answers. You're not digging in. When people like Tucker and people like Megyn Kelly have people like that on their shows and they don't ask the hard follow-up questions, anti-Semitism. It's just anti-Semitism in effect. They may not consider themselves anti-Semites. They may not think they hate Jews, but that is anti-Semitic behavior. So we need to be careful of this. It doesn't go well for nations that fall into Jew hatred. We need to be super careful about this. I think we should look at Israel and determine how and when and if supporting Israel and what they do is in the best interest of the United States. Absolutely America first. But I do believe now, right now, at this point in history, supporting Israel, the only democratic nation in the Middle East, the only nation that's a bulwark against terrorism in the Middle East. It's because Israel is there that it's not just run over with radical Islam. They are the center of Western democracy. They are the place where Arabs have the right to vote, the right to live, the right to equal employment, the right to sit on the Supreme Court, the right to be in the Knesset, something that, by the way, Arabs don't have in any Arab nations. They have all those rights. Christians have the rights there, and no, they're not under assault. No, they're not under attack all the time. All that stuff, just anti-Semitic blood libels and lies. Christians thrive in Israel. People are like, oh, Bethlehem, they're not thriving in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is under Arab control. It's under Palestinian control. And the Jewish or the Arab population in Bethlehem has been reduced by 90% since the Arabs took over Bethlehem. It's not Israel. It's the Arabs. And so again, it doesn't go well for nations that allow anti-Semitism to run rampant. And when I say allow, I'm not saying it should be outlawed. I'm not saying there should be speech laws. I'm not a fan of hate laws and all this stuff. But I do believe that we as a culture better push back against this stuff. If I sound a little bit frustrated, I'm frustrated. And full disclosure here, because I don't want people to say, well, Mark's saying that because, yeah, that's a Star of David. My relatives are Jewish. Both sides of my family were Ukrainian Jews. In the middle of that is a cross because my heart belongs to Jesus Christ. I'm a Christian, but ethnically, yeah, I'm Jewish. That never goes away. But that's not even why I'm saying this. I'm saying this because anti-Semitism is disgusting. It's racism, and we shouldn't tolerate racism in the United States of America. We don't tolerate any other kind of racism. We shouldn't tolerate anti-Semitism. It's an ugly, evil disease that's infecting America right now, and we need to fight back against the likes of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. And man, I don't know if Megan's on the edge there right now. I don't know what's going on, but the Hodge twins, all kinds of other people, Nick Fuentes, all these people, they're trying to mainstream themselves like a disease, like a borer worm into the heart of American society and culture on the right. The left is full-blown anti-Semite. The right cannot go there. I want to remind you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell. That way you beat the algorithm and always get to watch the BattleCry when it happens. If you want more news delivered straight to your inbox, make sure you sign up for conventionofstates.com/BattleCry list. And the next episode of COS at Home is going to feature the one, the only, the amazing, the magnificent, my good friend, Senator Rick Santorum, September 3rd at 8 p.m. You can register for that by going to conventionofstates.com/at home. Again, 8 p.m., September 3rd. And you can always send questions to me by writing to conventionofstates.com/ask Mark. Erica Eid says, hey, I saw you on Flashpoint talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. What resources would you point to for a Christian who is interested in learning more about it? Erica, look, I would start, and I don't think this is about being a Christian or a non-Christian. By the way, we're talking behind the scenes at Flashpoint about really doing a special series on Bitcoin and crypto. And by the way, separating those things, that's correct. Bitcoin is its own category for a variety of reasons. There are different kinds of cryptocurrencies. But if you want to understand that stuff, go to Grok or go to ChatGPT and say something like this. Put in a query that reads something like, I don't know anything about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. Can you give me a primer at an 8th grade level? And I'm not saying that because I think you're an 8th grader, Erica. I just think, personally, for me, I wanted it simplified when I first started. It can be very complex, be super overwhelming. And so just go there and ask that question. Hey, give me a primer on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies generally. You might want to ask it to teach you a little bit about blockchain because the technology that all these things ride on is called blockchain. And then what I do, this is how I use AI, is there'll be things in there that are interesting or don't make sense. And so you'll say, you can type in the next query and it says, when talking about blockchain, you said X. Can you explain that in more depth to me and even more simply? And just work your way through that. To me, there's no single resource. That to me is the most customized way to learn simply about Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain. Annie says, can you explain in layman terms why it's not a good idea for Senator Hawley to give out stimulus checks and raise the minimum wage? I'm conservative, but I don't understand it. Everybody suffered so much since COVID. I feel like we deserve that stimulus check. Look, Annie, I understand that impulse, and I don't disagree with that impulse. You're right. We've all suffered since COVID, but here's the problem. Giving us stimulus checks is just doing more COVID. It's stimulus. We gave out trillions of dollars of stimulus during COVID. Literally trillions of dollars flowed out, increasing the money supply. Every time the government gives you money, that money is not backed by anything. It's fake money. It's just paper money, right? So it's printed essentially. You might get it digitally, but it's just money that is created by the central bank, by the Federal Reserve, and they just print that stuff out. They pump it electronically into the system. For every dollar that's pumped into the system that didn't previously exist, the dollar in your pocket is worth less. And that's called inflation, right? Inflation means that your dollar has less buying power. Goods and services are more expensive. Your dollar buys less for every dollar. And for every dollar pumped into the system in stimulus checks, which is what this would be, your dollar is worth less. So the currency inflates, and that means now everything for you is going to be more expensive. So it doesn't really do anything for us. As far as the minimum wage, it's the same thing. There's no such thing as a minimum wage, really, except what the market will bear. Services and labor and goods should be priced at whatever the market will bear. And when we say that the minimum wage is, let's call it $20 an hour, well, what's going to happen is companies can't necessarily afford to pay minimum wage at $20 an hour or $25 an hour, whatever it is. And we see this in markets where states raise the minimum wage even higher. And what you see is now you go into McDonald's or wherever, and they replaced a bunch of the counter people with kiosks. You know what the kiosks get paid? Their minimum wage? $0. And all the young people looking for jobs, people just trying to get on their feet, start out, get a second job that would normally be at a McDonald's at $8 or $9 or $7.50 an hour or whatever it is, earning money, learning workplace skills, getting something on their resume, that first job, they've been replaced by kiosks. And the minimum wage, by the way, now is artificially driving up the cost of everything. Because for the places that keep those people at minimum wage at 20 or 22 or $25 an hour, they don't just eat those costs. They can't. They're not operating on big enough margins. Your restaurant might operate on a 3%, 2% margin. And so what do? They pass that cost on to you. You see surcharges, a minimum wage surcharge on the menu, or you see the prices just go up on their menus. And what that means is now you can't afford to go out to dinner anymore. You can't take your family out anymore. You can't afford to buy groceries because everything is just getting more expensive. If the clerks and the stalkers and everybody's getting a higher minimum wage, that cost is going to be passed on to you. You're going to pay the price. So what it does is it transfers the burden to a broader section of society to pay a smaller section a special stipend. And so it's just not healthy for an economy. I agree with you. Everybody suffered so much. And the way that we'll get out of this is by letting the economy come to a natural equilibrium. That's how you get more prosperity. Stephen Allen says, what's the biggest obstacle preventing COS from reaching the 34 required states? And I would argue it's gutless, weak, pathetic human beings that are quote unquote afraid. I hear this in legislatures all the time. Drives me crazy. Like, oh, what might happen if we have a convention of states? You know what might happen? We might get a balanced budget amendment. We might get our debt and our deficit under control. You know what might happen? We might limit the Supreme Court to 9. That might happen. And we might prevent the leftists from packing the Supreme Court. You know what else might happen? We might be able to give the states the concurrent authority with the federal government to enforce their borders if we ever have another border crisis. I pray to God we don't. I think if Democrats get back in office, we will. We can fix these problems permanently. And they're worried about, runaway convention. And I ask this all the time. Tell me the 38 states that will ratify something you don't like. Nobody can ever tell me that. There's no such thing as a runaway convention. So I'd say the biggest obstacle is fear. That's it. And the people that say these things like the JBS, the John Bull Society, the people who say those things, they're constitutional denialists. They deny the legitimacy of the United States Constitution. Now, I don't say that lightly. They'll say it to your face. It was illegally adopted in a runaway convention. They don't love the Constitution. They hate the Constitution. They pick and choose. Oh, you can love this part, but you can't love Article 5. Oh, we should revere the founders, except for they ran away. They're constitutional denialists. They hate the framers, they hate the founders, and they hate the United States Constitution. And by the way, most importantly and most disgustingly, people like that, including Eagle Forum, who says the same kind of stuff, and everybody on the left, La Raza, Planned Parenthood, MoveOn.org, Common Cause, Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, they're all in the same camp together. All of those people with Eagle Forum, with the John Birch Society, they're all in the same camp, and they all say the exact same things. They're anti-constitutionalists. They're constitutional deniers. So it's their fear. It's their dishonesty. Like, if it weren't for that, then we'd probably be pretty close to 34 states by now. So those people, I find them disgusting. They're not patriots. They're traitors to the country. And it's really sad for me to say this. On a lot of issues, we would be in agreement on abortion, on property rights, on things like that. But they are constitutional deniers. They deny the legitimacy of the Constitution itself because they say it was illegally adopted. They're ridiculous. That's been proven time and time again, not true. And they deny that we should have Article 5 in the Constitution or that we should use it. So that's the biggest problem. Tracy Grabiak asks, could JBS members or other individuals be sued for telling lies in public about COS action and its leaders? No, they really can't. And they do lie a lot. I mean, it's just a constant stream of garbage and lies that come out of their mouth. So what we generally do is we just try to avoid them. They really, 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 really want to debate us. They're dishonest people. I don't get on a debate stage. We don't get on a debate stage with people who lie. If you do, then you're just playing into their game. And you're willing to stand on stage with people who fabricate stuff, people who repeat the same lies over and over, like 1787 was a runaway convention. They know it's not true. It's been proven definitively to not be true. There's a law review article about it with all the citations. It's about 100 pages. It's incredible. It's definitive. They still say it over and over. So look, we don't get on stage with them. We're not going to sue them. You can't sue them for lying about this stuff. There's a lot of latitude in the sphere of public debate, and you can't really sue people for that kind of stuff. All right, JB says, if it were up to you, where would you want an Article 5 convention to take place? Oh, you could get me in so much trouble here because I would pick a favorite spot and then everybody else would be mad at me. Here's what I would say. I want it not in Washington, D.C., and I want it in the center of the country somewhere because I want it to be a place where kind of equidistant from all parts of the country, equally easy or difficult for everybody to get to. I'll throw out some cities out there. I'm not saying these cities, but cities like Kansas City, cities like Oklahoma City, cities like Dallas. These are places that are hubs that are easy for people to get to. So those are some places that come to mind offhand. They also have to have sufficient resources. Like, you're going to need an arena to hold this. So you need an arena that's big enough. You need hotel space. You need to be able to accommodate the media that will be there, which will be not just local, but national and international. So all of those things come into play. I would say probably needs to be kind of a good convention city. All right, before we close out, remember the BattleCry call to action this week is 5 for 5. So that's 5 for 5, right? Go out and get 5 people to sign the petition. Write into me next week. You can write those same place you would write questions, right? conventionofstates.com /ask Mark. Tell me about how you got 5. Just let me know you got 5. I'd love to see hundreds of people writing in and telling me you got 5. Go out and do it. God bless you guys. I'll be thinking of you all week long. We'll see you next week on the BattleCry.